What's up, guys? Thank you for joining me again on this lovely journey of YouTube videos that we're doing. Today's book will be... today's book will be this book, called The Smell of Apples, was written by Mark Behr. Mark Behr was born on the 19th of October in 1963 in Tanzania, and as a young boy he moved to South Africa, where he lived on the east coast in Natal and identified as an Afrikaner, but he always felt more comfortable in English. He became an informant for the Apartheid government during his studies at Stellenbosch in order to pay for his student fees. Later he also became a lecturer at Rhodes College in Tennessee and the University of Witwatersrand. Unfortunately, on the 27th of November 2015, Mark passed away. So what was apartheid? Apartheid was a political and social system implemented by the South African government pre-1994, and this apartheid government enforced segregation based on race. In 1994, Nelson Mandela was our first black president. Also today, thankfully, apartheid no longer exists. So what is this book about? This book is based in the 1970s, arguably the peak of the apartheid regime, through little 11-year-old boy Marnus Erasmus's eyes. Marnus grows up in a pro-apartheid family, where his father especially, who is a general in the army, is a big advocate for the apartheid regime. He has a strong disdain for the African community, and his beliefs are rubbed off onto the rest of the family. Marnus, who idolizes his father, takes whatever his father says as complete truth. Now, unfortunately, you will understand that we are easily influenced by family and friends, and what they believe and what we believe generally tend to synchronize with one another. So of course Marnus, idolizing his father, and his mother being pro-apartheid also, however she seems slightly spineless in that sense, he follows exactly what his dad says, and he believes what his dad says, and that rubs off on his friend Frikkie Delport also. And Marnus obviously doesn't understand that what he's doing and what he's saying is wrong, and obviously that's because this is the society he's growing up in, this is all he knows, and it's unfortunate. So what does Marnus really believe? Of course, he thinks his dad is telling the truth, and he listens to what his dad says, but this is not exactly how he experiences life. Often he comes across people of the African community, and everything of his experience is generally positive. But that doesn't mean that he's completely convinced. Marnus is a bit all over the place with what he believes. On the one hand, he has positive experiences with the African community, and on the other hand, he listens to what his dad says, what his mom says, and gently pushes it onto his friend Frikkie. This unfortunately leads to a calamitous mix-up in the way he believes South African lifestyle is. Marnus' older sister, Ilse, she goes to the Netherlands, and of course during the time the Netherlands is far more liberal than South Africa was. South Africa was a very conservative country. This meant that when she returned back to South Africa, she realized that things were not quite as they should be, and she becomes a big advocate for liberalism, and she explains to Marnus on a few occasions that what they believe in is not exactly how the rest of the world believes, and this plants a little seed of doubt in Marnus's mind. At the end of the day, Marnus is just an 11-year-old boy, and how he sees life is completely influenced by everyone around him. As a young as a young boy, of course, his mind is still very malleable, and it's very easy to influence the way he thinks. So why is this book called The Smell of Apples? You'll have to find out. So this book also received multiple awards and was actually nominated for the Booker Prize in 1995. So what did I find interesting about this book? Growing up in South Africa, we have a very, very strong history with apartheid. Fortunately, I was born post-apartheid and never experienced anything firsthand. So everything that I know from apartheid comes from textbooks, from classrooms, from the media, from documentaries. I never saw anything personally myself in accordance to apartheid. So of course everything that I know about it is all secondary sourced, if you want to call it that. So this book in particular is a fictional book. However, I think, from what I can imagine, I believe that this is quite an accurately described book, where the accounts of what happens to Marnus and how they live their life how they live their everyday lives, I feel is quite accurate. Of course, I am possibly wrong, but I believe that Mark has written a fairly accurate account of what life was like. In this sense, I think that it's very interesting to see what life was like through the eyes of an Afrikaner 11-year-old boy, and to see how they were influenced, or he was influenced. We're talking maybe specifically about Mark. I feel like this book opens up a different perspective of what life might have been like, and how I feel like this book might open up a new perspective for me personally, how life was like through the eyes of an 11-year-old Afrikaner boy. I wouldn't say a better perspective or a worse perspective, but definitely a different one. I personally haven't experienced too much in the way of stories or information of what life was like for the privileged, especially of the Afrikaner community. But I felt like it was quite an interesting story to see how easily a young child's mind can be manipulated. So in the end, I feel if you are interested in the apartheid regime and what life was like in South Africa from about the 1940s to about the 1990s, I think this is definitely a good book that you should pick up. It will give you an insight of what life was like for the privileged. Of course, you also need to balance what you know with what life was like for the underprivileged. South Africa definitely has a very diverse and interesting history. Definitely not all of it was good. But I think this book will help you understand a little bit more what life was like. I really enjoyed this book again, because also it's another super short book, very easy to read, full of South African slang. Maybe you're interested in that. I do personally get a lot of questions about apartheid. Again, I didn't live in it, so everything I know is all secondary information. So if you want to learn a bit for yourself, I would definitely pick this book up. I would give this one about an 8.5 out of 10. I felt like it was a very, very interesting book. Very quick read. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you soon.